Hi, this is Cassie Brighter with Empowered Trans Woman, and I have today with me a trans activist from Manila, from the Philippines, who's been making waves and causing trouble in the Philippines. She has recently met Congresswoman Geraldine Roman and even the President of the Philippines, and she's been all over the news in the Philippines. I'm really excited to have her with me, and her name is Gretchen Custodio Diez. Hi, Gretchen, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Yes, it took quite a bit of work to get us all on the camera at the same time. We've tried so many different ways.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really happy that you stuck with me and that we've made it work. So some of the people who are watching this might know, some of them will not know. So I'm going to catch them up basically to what I know. Actually, I'm going to ask you because you were there, I wasn't there. So it's probably better if you tell the story. But what happened recently was one of those very typical situations where a woman like you or a woman like me is just trying to go to the bathroom and we find ourselves with somebody challenging us. So what happened in your case?
Okay, in my case, I was in line to the women's washroom, and all of a sudden this janitress approached me and asking me to use the male washroom. So I don't want any conflict or any to create a scene. So what I did is just step out of the line, but I realized that that is not right, and I felt like I had to report it to the management. That's why I took the initiative to record the situation, and I was just basically asking her where she want me to go. I was camcording it so that I can show it to the management, and maybe they can do something about it. But what happened afterwards was I didn't realize that it would be worse. So
do you think that she reacted to the fact that you were filming her? Because you were very polite.
I was very polite, actually, but she could have just. She even asked if I was taking a picture. I even told her that I'm camcording it, but all of a sudden she slapped my camera phone. So that's where I felt like I should not stop recording it. And so she dragged me to the security office. Inside the security office, I wasn't camcording because I thought that the security personnel would know better about handling customers, especially a person whose gender is different from what other people are used to. I thought they were trained for that. So I stopped camcording, but all of a sudden I felt like they were disrespecting me, and I was outnumbered. I was alone that time, and there were two janitresses, and there are around 6 security guards. So I felt outnumbered, and all of them are blaming me and teasing me. So that's when I started to go live on Facebook. The reason why I went live is because first I thought that I needed my friends or family members to know where I am and what's happening to me. And at the same time, I knew that I needed to document what is happening inside, because everything can be just twisted, or they can just make stories
Exactly.
about what happened inside. So that's just for my safety. I didn't really know that it will go viral. It will be trending.
I have a question for you. You mentioned that they were teasing you also. I can understand their motivation for challenging you, but what do you think was the reason why they were teasing you? Do you think that they were nervous? Do you think that they weren't able to handle the situation, or they being unprofessional? Do you think that it was actually like malice and hate?
There's obviously hate. The culture here in the Philippines is that they look at transgender people, members of the LGBT community, as second-class citizens. They don't really pay that much respect because they just think of us as funny stuff. They
Mm.
don't take us seriously. So I think what they're trying to do there is to bully me. They wanted me to um, break down in tears, knowing that the situation is very harassing. But I think what challenged them more is that I'm so composed and I wasn't saying anything, and I wasn't, what do you call that? I wasn't hysterical. So maybe that triggers them more to tease me and to shame me
I think
to
so.
the
I have
point
to
that,
tell you that watching the video, I found the situation of security guards harassing a trans woman, the situation of a janitor challenging a trans woman, fairly typical. It didn't surprise me, that situation. I have seen the situation play out before. The part that I found surprising, the part that I found kind of like, that's when you grab the popcorn, that's when you go, this is getting interesting, is the fact that the trans woman was not at all willing to be a victim, at all willing to be a joke. And you stood your ground, you kept your composure, you spoke, you at never point did you become agitated, you spoke really rationally. And I think that this was such a very well handled situation that they didn't know how to react to that.
exactly, because they thought that people like us would be just scared and will just easily, uh, break down, or people see transgender people as ill-mannered people, and maybe they have not, they they realize that I'm totally different.
Mm-hmm.
That's what challenged them more. And what they're asking me is this: they're asking me to delete the video that I recorded, and they wanted me to stop um, going live. So I asked them, if you're not doing anything wrong, then why are you so afraid of this video, right? And they were telling me, no, we're just doing our job. This is part of our job. And I told them, exactly, if you're just doing your job, then why should you be ashamed, right? So if a
Exactly. And by the
farmer
way,
is being filmed planting seeds or doing their job, then why should they be afraid? If what they're telling me is true, is that I don't see any reason for them to ask me to stop recording them, not unless
absolutely, if they're
they're
not doing
doing
anything
something
wrong, right?
terrible.
Something, by the way, that caught my
Exactly.
attention too is um, the janitress, who was a fairly small female person, took you
Hmm.
from the bathroom area all the way to the security area of the mall.
Hmm.
Um, she had so many different choices that she could have made as a human being. She could have left you alone.
Hmm.
She could have spoken with you. Um, what she chose to do was to hold you by the arm, so
Hmm.
physical contact, and then move you all the way to the security area. And on top of that,
Hmm.
the whole distance she's taking you there, she is loudly proclaiming this person wanted to use the female. So she's trying to humiliate you.
Exactly. And um, well, it is good that if many people would understand what is happening, but if you are one of the customers of the mall, what you would think on top of your head, if you're seeing someone is being dragged, then people might think, oh, maybe that person is a criminal, right? Or
Right.
I did something really terrible. So that is what's embarrassing. And I'm a very understanding person. I'm a very considerate person. What pains me is that on that day, I had so many lawyers who wanted to push um, for a case against her, but I chose to forgive her because I understand that she's a mom and she had a kid waiting for her. I was very considerate, and I'm very, what do you call that? I'm pretty much um, gracious
Yeah.
for giving her that forgiveness on that same date that I was harassed and I was so humiliated.
Mm-hmm.
But what pains me more is that a week after that incident, she had an interview telling another version of the story. So I don't get it. On that day, she even wrote an apology letter to me. So, and now she's telling another version of his story. So
I saw the letter,
I
and
don't know.
the letter seemed sincere, but also the letter seemed to come from a defensive position, from a position of trying to somehow. It didn't go far enough. It didn't go. There was no tangible remorse. She apologized because she
Exactly.
felt that she needed to, but there was no remorse in the fact that you take aside gender, you take aside procedure, you take aside mall protocol. When you just look at a human and the way a human should behave with decency, you can see that that person was doing harm. And I didn't see her
Exactly.
apologizing for the harm. So, what was her new version?
Her new version is that she said that there were two women complaining inside the washroom, which is funny because I've never got a chance to go inside the female washroom. I was actually
Yes, you were not in the
line.
bathroom. You were in line outside.
Yeah,
I remember
I
that.
was in line. I wasn't even, and nobody approached me, and then she told me that I created a scene and I was shouting all over the place, and that she brought me to the security office peacefully, which is, I just don't know. She's
It's on
pretty
camera. It's so
impossible.
obvious that you
It's on
weren't
camera.
shouting or
So
causing
what
a
she's
scene.
telling me is that whatever it is that is what she's telling the whole Philippines is that whatever it is that you saw on that video, that's not true.
Yeah.
My story is the truth. So,
I
but you
kind of
know,
really.
some people would still believe it, would still buy it because of that stigma on our community.
Absolutely. I had several moments in
We
my.
already have all of these evidences. We already have all this proof, but simply because she's a cisgender woman, the sympathy of people will go with her. So it's just sad that we have that double standard.
I would challenge. I mean, I'm hoping that you're not right. I understand why you would say that, but I'm hoping that you're not right. I'm hoping that people are curious enough, especially if they get to see the video, to challenge her version of the story, because it's really evident that you didn't cause a scene. It's really evident that you were extremely cooperative and that she caused the scene when she walked you there. I wanted to tell
I
you.
wish it could be as simple as that, but um, especially in this age, people are not contented with the plain black and white side of the truth. They always they're always assuming that there's something beyond that. I said in one of my interviews that might be the reason why documentary films are not that marketable. People would always go with science fiction because for some reason people find fiction more interesting than facts and evidences.
And I'm a fairly skeptical, fairly cynical person, but my theory is that it moves the needle on a very, very small portion of the population. There's a large portion of the population that doesn't understand, should understand, but they're not going to bother to look. Then
Exactly.
there's another portion of the population that is already sympathetic, already understands, so they really don't need to be told. They already get it. And then there's this small portion of people that are curious enough, don't understand, but want to find out more. It's a small number of people. But it's documentation. It's been documented and everything moves things forward. I wanted to tell you, I remember an experience where I went with my son. My son was a teenage boy. We went to an anime convention in Los Angeles. 40,000 people there. And I was drinking a lot of soda. This was new in my transition. It was 2016. And I needed to go to the bathroom, and I was terrified. And I had many positive experiences. At first, early in the day, I had to go to the women's bathroom. I just went to the bathroom, walked in, there was the stall, I used it, I left. I had to go like six more times that same day. More and more people, because it got very crowded. So in the middle of the day, when I had to go to the bathroom, now there is a line of 10 to 15 minutes just to get into the bathroom. And there's a line inside the bathroom waiting for a stall. So I'm standing there with a lot of women all around me. And I was terrified, and I was very prepared. If anybody was going to say something, I was prepared to just leave. And no one said anything bad. No one made any kind of comment, good or bad. One other woman decided to talk to me just to talk about the event, just like two women talking. And then the janitress in this case was listening to radio really loud, and she was annoying because of the radio being so loud. And I remember that myself and two other women were laughing at how loud her radio was. And it was a nice moment because it was just women talking. And
exactly.
It's hard to explain to cisgender people how your heart feels in moments like that or how your heart feels in moments when it goes bad. When you're seen correctly versus when somebody sees you incorrectly, sees you wrong and doesn't understand, you know?
Exactly. Sometimes they don't understand the fear that we have to go through every day. You don't know whether you qualify enough for them to consider you as a woman. And I do hope that would change, that no person would ever feel afraid to step out or to be who and what she wants to be. That's what
it's
I'm
really
aiming
important.
for.
And the thing is there are two narratives I constantly like to challenge. The first one is we're not asking anyone to disbelieve their eyes. We're not asking anybody, we're not trying to fool anybody. I am very aware of the fact that I was born with male characteristics. And I'm not trying to pretend that anything otherwise, but I'm just trying to convince. It's basically software and hardware. I'm trying to tell people, I understand the hardware, but I'm telling you the software, the heart, the soul is female.
Exactly. And another person is a woman or as a boy or as a man, at least consider that person as a human being, and just be considerate, right? Because
Absolutely.
if we're going to set a certain standards when it comes to what is female and what is male, there are so many female who would not fit that certain standard of being female, and there are so many male who would not really fit in a certain standards of being male. Why don't we just consider one another as human beings, right, and respect whatever preferences we have or whatever orientation or identity that we have? I think I am dreaming that we can someday achieve that kind of society.
Yes. You know what, Gretchen? I think that we are kind of walking into a war. Not a war with us, a war between men and women. Here's an example that I give, which is Argentina, which is where I'm from, is a very welcoming society. I don't know how the Philippines is. I'm not talking about gender. I'm just talking about if you move to as a foreigner, Argentinians will open their arms to you, and you will very soon be a part of Argentina. China is very different. You could live in China for 10 years, for 20 years. You will still be a foreigner. So different cultures respond differently to immigrants.
Mhm.
And I'm saying basically we are immigrants. We're women immigrants. Um,
Exactly.
and then there are
And
situations like here in America, the Japanese Americans were put in concentration camps in the 1940s because Japan was at war with America. So
mhm.
if you have a situation where the two groups are fighting, it's a lot worse. And I think that to some extent, the two groups are fighting. Men have been unkind towards women. Women have been unkind towards men. And we get caught in the middle of that battle. And so,
Mhm.
because of that, they look at us and they say, well, you say that you're one of us, but we don't trust you. You could be a spy.
Yeah, it's like that. Um, yeah, it's totally like a war, but what saddens me is that, just like what you've said, we're caught in the middle. It seems like what they're trying to do, at least the situation here in the Philippines, is that it's LGBTQ community versus women versus men and versus the church.
Mm.
So, you know, what we're just aiming for is equality, right? We are not um, aiming to be greater than men or women. In fact, we just want it to be equal to them. We just want equal opportunities. We just want equal treatment, and 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 that's the very root of feminism, right? That's why it pains me when I see, especially here in the Philippines, there are women who claim themselves as feminists, and yet they don't want to consider the rights of people like me or like us.
Yeah. Well, I
I
think
don't
that there's
I don't see any sense in that.
there's a
What we're
blindness.
trying to say is that um, hundred years ago, women have been fighting for their rights to be equal with men, and now that they are slowly getting that equality. Now it's time for us, members of the LGBT community, to fight for equal rights as well. So I don't
Exactly.
get it why some women are against what we're fighting for, which is equality. Women have been
Absolutely.
fighting
Yeah.
for equality for hundred of years now,
They're little
and
blind pockets. They're
we're
pockets of
now just starting
blindness.
our fight.
Instead of seeing like the same way that you, sister, want rights, I am also your sister and I want rights too. But
Exactly.
you talk about equality, and that's asking for a lot. When Rosa Parks in
Mm,
America decided to not stand up and go to the back of the bus, people were shocked. When
mm,
black people in America decided to look for equality, white people were shocked. There's no reason to be shocked. It's another human being asking for equal rights. But to them, they were used to an inequality. So when you ask for equality,
exactly.
it's a surprise.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, the situation in the Philippines is not a constant. It's been improving and it's been changing. I would say traditionally, what we see from the United States is that in the Philippines, trans women are not looked at as women. They're looked as lady boys, and they're kept in a sector of society that's been kind of
Mm,
the norm for many years. And it seems to me
mm,
that with things like Geraldine Roman being appointed to Congress and things like that, it's moving. It's
mm.
shifting. Do you see that happening? Is it something that you've witnessed in your life?
Well, it is happening, but yes, you were right. It is pretty much slow, like very slow. In the Philippines, we're culturally visible,
Mm-hmm.
but we are not politically accepted.
Yeah, that's very true. It's
So
objectified and
that's just the sad part of it. People know that Filipinos know that you guys exist. You guys are there. We have all of these badges, But when it comes to us getting recognized equally, when it comes to us getting that equal opportunities to education, to employment, it seems like we're always at the back seat.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it just takes someone to be courageous enough to go against the tide um, and trailblaze. Right?
Exactly.
And
I wanted to ask you, you
but
talked about education. What was your background like? What were your opportunities in terms of education? Because what I'm seeing obviously is you're very young, and so
thank you.
and I am so old.
No.
No, but what I'm saying is that there are generational things happening in our society right now, and you have trans women who have the opportunity to transition early in life, but that also brings about a number of challenges. So I wanted to ask you a little bit, if you want to tell me, to the degree that you want to tell me, what was it like for you as a young person coming into womanhood and announcing yourself as a woman in the world, and what was that experience like, and how much support did you receive, and how much pushback did you receive?
Well, growing up, I was homophobic. I was transphobic. It's something that was uh, the, that was in me as a young person
Because it's all around you.
I grew up in a society. I grew up in a society where everyone believes that homosexuality is a disease, and not just a disease, but it's both a mental and spiritual disease.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in a very conservative family, and it's just sad because I am afraid and I am disgusted with transgender people, but I know deep inside that I'm a transgender woman. So
Yeah.
it's quite a challenge, and I know that I know that my gender identity is already is is a disgrace. That's why I focus so much on my studies. So growing up, I'm pretty much studious. I'm actually a consistent honor student, and I just did well in school. And as much as I like to act like a man, but the soft side of me always comes out. And I only transitioned third year college
Uh-huh.
because I was already working then. I cannot ask my mom or my dad for money for me to buy um, hormonal treatments, because they obviously they're against it because they don't want me to transition. So
Let me ask you something about your parents. Oh, but first let me share something with you, and then I'd like to ask you about your parents. Do you know there's an Australian comedian called Hannah Gadsby? Did you hear anything about her?
I've heard I've heard things. I've heard her name before, but I can't remember actually watching her yet.
She did something really special about 2 years ago. She had a 1-hour comedy special in Sydney, Australia, and it was filmed by Netflix. What was very special is that the first 25 minutes are funny. And then she turns. And then she speaks with truth and with honesty about what it's like to grow up as a lesbian in Australia. And one thing that she says that in comedy, you create the beginning of the story, then you talk about the middle, and the middle has the tension, and that's where the funny is. And she never talks about the end. She never talks about the other stuff, because that's not funny. So as a comedian, she would always tell these interrupted stories. But now she wants to tell the whole story. She wants to tell the truth. And it broke me open. I was crying so much watching it. And one of the things that she said, which is what I got reminded because of what you said, she said, so By the time I realized that I was a lesbian, it was already too late because I was already a homophobe. And that's very true for me too. I remember being 17 years old and thinking, dear God, please not let me be one of these people.
Exactly. You know, you cry every night, you pray every night, hoping that that disease will be gone. Because of course I love my parents so much, especially my mom, and I don't want her to be ashamed of me.
Yeah.
You know, I cry every night, and I try my best for her to be really proud of me. But what can I do? My gender identity is my gender identity.
Mm-hmm.
That's something I cannot hide for an entire lifetime.
Do you know, many
it's
years
hard.
ago, a couple of 100 years ago, being born left-handed meant that you were touched by the devil, and parents would try really hard to make sure that their children wrote with the right hand. They would tie their left hand behind their back. And thankfully, nowadays in society, if a child is born left-handed, other people will just allow that person to be. They don't
Exactly.
torture them.
But you know, I did not have any hate with my parents for you know, initially not allowing me to transition. You know, we know that they're just doing it because they loved us. Um, they know how society treats people like us, and they know that life will be tough if you are a transgender person.
Yeah.
So I knew that she was just doing that to protect me. And maybe that's the mindset of those parents who were not allowing their kids to use their left hands because they know that the society will judge them. And of course, as a parent, you don't want to see your child being bullied. You don't want to see your child being humiliated by another person.
Yes, absolutely.
And I do hope that just like how we accepted the lefties, because I'm a lefty myself,
Me too.
how we accepted that, I just hope that people would really see transgenderism or being a lesbian, being gay, being bisexual as something that's normal, as something that's human.
Yes,
right?
it's one more variation of a human being. Some people are blonde, some people have brown hair, some people have blue eyes, some people are short or tall, and some people are LGBT. And it's just that different, another human being in front of you.
Exactly.
I remember that
wish...
that thing about agonizing of what will my parents think of me, and that deep shame, because it's everywhere. This transphobia, this homophobia, it's everywhere. And I remember hearing my father tell jokes at the barbecue, and I remember the other men, grown men, telling jokes about people like me at the barbecue.
Exactly.
And me understanding full well that I need to hide this part of myself. I need to destroy this part of myself.
Yes, or else you'll be part of that joke.
Yes,
or
otherwise,
you'll always be the joke.
Exactly, and you don't want your parents ashamed of you. That's such a, if people understood this burden. Now, also, you said something interesting, because LGBT activists and friends of mine tell me a parent has to be really heartless to not support you. And you mentioned something that I think is legitimate and it's worth mentioning, which is sometimes it's because they love you. They're afraid for you. They are worried for you. They want to make sure that you have a good life. So they don't want you to get hurt, right?
Exactly. But now most parents are becoming more open. They realize the importance of transgender people or LGBT members of having a strong core. They now understand that you know, love and acceptance should always begin with the family.
Yes.
So many parents now are more nourishing and more open when it comes to supporting their child, especially when it comes to transition, because you know it goes down with exposure. Right now, parents are seeing that some transgender women really looks like a woman and were successful in their life. So if we have so many people, if we expose so many people to like that, especially transgender people who can be successful, who are not just jokes, and who can be truly beautiful and by embracing who they really are, then many more parents will support their kids. Because during
Exactly.
those times, what parents can only see are transgender people being jokes in society, transgender people being bullied and being harassed. Of course, as a parent, you don't want that to happen to your kid. But if only many parents would see that a transgender person is on a cover of a magazine or owning a successful business or is a CEO or an engineer or a doctor, then many parents will not be so afraid of their of the future for their kids because they knew that um, with love and support, um, their kid can become the best version of themselves.
Yes, and
So
actually, there's a bigger thing here, which is parents always have the choice with every child.
mhm,
It's a conversation since forever, since humans have had children. They always have the choice of loving with fear or loving with courage. So
mhm,
if parents love you with fear, they tell you don't become a musician, don't become an artist, just you know become a clerk.
be a
Become
doctor.
yes, exactly. And if you want to be a doctor, by all means be a doctor. But if you don't want to, if you want to write poetry and if you want to play rock and roll, then a parent should support that too. But some parents immediately are like, no, you should have a fallback plan. You should have a real job. You should work in retail because they're trying to make your dreams small because they don't want you to get hurt. And that's loving with
Mhm,
fear. And then the other approach is dream big, go out, own the world, and once if the world breaks you, I will put you back together and we will make it happen. And when you have parents like that, you
mhm,
get Beyonce and you get Mariah Carey and you get uh, you know Colin Kaepernick and you get the celebrities that move the world
mhm,
because their parents told them you can do it, you can pursue your dreams. So
mhm.
a lot of it is not even about gender, it's about living in fear. And one more
Exactly.
thing that I wanted to add is that if because I'm hoping that parents are going to watch this, my life was a lot easier before I transitioned. um,
Mhm,
it was good walking around in the world pretending to be a man.
mhm.
It made my life easy, but I was not living. It
That's not who you are.
it was a waste of time. It wasn't me present living my life. Now my life is a lot more
Mhm,
challenging, which is not my
mhm.
fault. It's society's fault. Society should catch up.
It,
But I'm
it's just
living.
like you having a choice. It's either you live your life the way other people wants you to live your life, or you live your life for yourself, being true to yourself and being who you really are.
Exactly. What are your parents' reactions to seeing you uh, being introduced to presidents and stuff like that?
Well, my dad is so proud. I don't have a mom anymore. She passed
Oh,
away
I'm sorry.
due to breast cancer last 2013,
Mm.
the day after Christmas.
Oh no.
So every after Christmas, it's her death anniversary. It was sad, but we just have to move on. I've always been a daddy's girl. So my dad seeing me um, go to the Senate and go to um, the official residence of the president, um, he was just so proud. Actually, he's always been proud of me. Um, it was more, my mom is the one who's more vocal about um, me
That's pretty
not
common in Filipino
going through
culture, right?
transition. You know,
The
first
mother is
3
more
months of my
bossy in
transition.
Filipino culture, right?
Yes. First 3 months of my transition, my mom would always nag me, no, you should stop that. And she's even throwing my, my female dresses away,
Oh.
my women's clothes away, because, she's like that. But, she got tired. Eventually, it just accept when she saw that my transition is becoming beautiful and
Uh-huh.
I'm becoming happier with how I look and the way I live my life, then she became proud of me.
Very good.
Sometimes you just really have to show to them that um, what you can do as a person, that your gender does not define who you are. It's just assuring them that um, not just because I transitioned, that does not mean that I'm a different person already. I'm still the same um, son that they loved and they are proud of. Same mind, same brain,
Yeah.
and same kindness. So there.
Yes, the same
I,
child
I
with the same
that-
dreams.
that's why I pray every night, especially right after um, that incident.
Mm-hmm.
When I go to interviews, when I go to different functions and different events, I always pray that um, I was hoping that up there somewhere she's really proud of me, looking down on me.
Oh, that's sweet. When you talked about being daddy's girl, it reminded me of a video which I'm sure you have seen, which is the video about a girl called Kevin,
Mm-hmm.
Filipino model, and in the film, a girl called Kevin. You see the father at
Yes,
first.
Kevin Ballot.
Yeah, at first you see the father disapproving of her, and then at the end you see the father helping her get ready for a pageant.
Exactly.
So that reminded me a little bit. So in terms of people
Mm-hmm.
who are in the news in the Philippines, for example, the fact that Geraldine Roman is now a congresswoman, this happened 3 years ago. How did it affect
Mm-hmm.
your view? How did it affect your life? Was it strange to see a trans woman getting elected to politics?
Well, it's definitely a big news. But honestly, I have not heard much of Congresswoman Geraldine Roman until that incident. When she won, of course, it's pretty much big news, but I haven't heard of her in a while. Then all of a sudden this happened, and that incident um, paved way for us meeting each other. The very first time I saw her, she was a tall woman, and I was so starstruck. She was so well spoken, and she was so brave. So she went there reprimanding everyone, and I remember I was just looking at her, admiring her beauty and her courage, and I didn't I would never imagine that a congresswoman will go there and help me out.
Marami lang ako po. Okay, I saw the video. Meron pang putin-putin. Yes. Okay, let's go back to farmer's market. You stopped me from using the bathroom.
That moment really touched my life, and I was with her with a lot of interviews and a lot of events, and she was a very kind person, and I'm always proud that I know her personally.
Yes.
And she has a very big heart, and she's very intelligent.
I know that I am the representative of the 1st District of Bataan, but I am also proudly a member of the LGBT community.
So right now, she's one of the trans women that I look up to.
Oh, absolutely.
And I was hoping that we see a lot of, just like what I've said in the interview, I don't see any reason why we should prevent transgender people into running into office. These are representative of our country, and there are so many Filipinos who are member of the LGBT community. Then how come we don't have a representative? So that's what I have in mind. She actually really inspired me.
Yes, it is. Yes,
yes, it is illegal under this ordinance to discriminate. Lalo sa pagpapapasok ng mga CR. But I'm sorry to say, a lot of this type of incidents happens throughout our country. The LGBT community might be a minority, but they are still Filipinos whose rights have to be protected. And we as members of Congress have to stand up for equality. Why? That is the question in our country with its own implementing rules and regulations. But this is happening. Why? Why? That is the question that we intend to answer in an investigation in aid of legislation in the House of Representatives. Maybe there's still a lack of awareness on gender sensitivity in many companies in the Philippines. It may be providential, but today they have already named the chairperson as well as the vice chairperson of the Committee of Women and Gender in the House of Representatives. So I have all the intention in the world to file a resolution for an investigation in aid of legislation into this incident.
Yeah, and actually, in terms of what comes next, she inspired you for action, and so where do you see your activism going next? What do you see yourself doing in the future?
Well, honestly, right now, I'm clueless. People are when I don't really have intention to run for politics, but I just said in one interview that if there's really a need for someone like me to run for public office, then I don't see any problem with a trans woman running for office. Then that statement really received a lot of backlash from people, and that just proves how unwelcoming the society is for now to transgender people aiming to be taken seriously, especially for public office. But right now I'm actually planning to start a vlog. I'd like it to become a travel show locally in the Philippines, and it's not just going to be a travel show, but I would like to reach out to different communities and see how members of the LGBTQ community are living in that society. I'd like it to be documented. I'd like to show everyone the real lives of people like me living in this country. And of course to show as well how beautiful the country is.
Yes, I think it's a really good time to do that, because the lines between YouTube and television, the lines between vlog and show are getting blurred, and you never know when something becomes popular how big it could get. And you have so much access to the rest of the world through the internet, so when you find your voice, and that's kind of how what the way Empowered Trans Woman became, the way it was born. The thing that I want to do is I want to tell the stories about what we can become. I don't want for people to see us always as victims or as strange or as an isolated
losers.
Yeah, exactly. I want to show the fact that there are people. There's in Argentina the biggest opera house in Argentina is called Teatro Colón, and there is she's either from Peru or from Chile, but she lives in Argentina. She's a trans woman who is maybe 50, maybe 60 years old. She transitioned very late in her life, and she is an opera star. And there's a lieutenant colonel here in the United States who is a trans woman, and there are engineers and doctors and lawyers and successful politicians and philosophers who are trans people in society. And I want to show that. I want to show people the fact that we can be anything in society.
Exactly.
So that's my passion. I want to challenge these narrow visions that people have about us, and surprise them with the fact that there's so much more, and also for people to understand a little bit more of our journey. It's some of the misunderstandings are shocking that people have about us, you know?
Exactly. And I really am thankful for people like you who are bringing out these stories to the world. That's also what I'd like to do. I'd like to break the stereotype of transgender people. I don't want, because here in the Philippines, if you're a transgender woman, it's either you work in salons or you work in a comedy bar. And I have nothing against those people who work for salons and comedy bars. It's a very good profession that they are into. But I'd like people to understand that there are so many of us who are very good speakers. There's so many of us who are in the health industry. There's so many of us who are businesswomen. There's so many of us who are architects. So I just like to break that stereotype, and I'd like, just like your intention, I'd like to show the whole Philippines that we can be whoever we want to be, as long as people would try not to judge us, right? Because the only reason why people don't take us seriously is that they thought that that we are not capable of doing anything else aside from being funny and being beautiful, being sexy, and that's it.
Yes, it's funny because wasn't that always the problem with just women in society in general, that we would be put in these boxes that women can only be mothers or wives or
exactly,
or just pretty, and
or just stay at home.
Something kind of funny is I have
just be finesse.
It's just stay at home wives. I have a friend who's a trans woman who's just beginning her journey recently. She just very recently got her name legally changed. She really likes cars. She's an engineer. She really likes to work on cars. And she's very conflicted because she doesn't want to give that up. And I'm thinking, who says you have to? Who says that a woman can't work on cars?
Exactly, right?
It's
just, showing people a lot of possibilities, right? And this struggle is pretty much the same as the struggle of women. And that's why it breaks my heart whenever I see a woman who's not supporting our advocacy for our campaign for equality. I'm hoping that everyone would just hold each other's hand and be together, because after all, we're just aiming for the same things. We just want equality.
Yes.
We just want to be treated fairly, and we just want to be seen not based from our gender or disability or skin color or socioeconomic status, but we just want to be seen as human being. And I think that kind of society would be really wonderful.
Exactly.
Where people are free to live their full potential, and everyone are free to realize their dreams.
There's probably going to be a lot of Filipina trans girls watching this from Empowered Trans Woman, because I have a following in the Philippines. So what would you say to a young trans girl in the Philippines? What words do you have for her?
Well, do not lose your core. We are used to people isolating us. Just embrace that isolation, because the more that you embrace yourself from who you are, no one can really break you apart. Know yourself better than anyone else, because many people will throw things at you. Many people would say nasty things about you, but if you truly know who you are and what it is that you really wanted in life, then there's no way for them to stop you for getting what you want and being what you want. And if you're trying to know yourself, but you realize that you think that you're not going to make it because you're weak or you're not used to being alone, then surround yourself with positive people. There's so many people out there who would really understand who you are, try to reach out with someone that you can look up to and would really help you into achieving and realizing your dreams. Just reach out to them. There will always be that someone who would understand you and embrace you for who you are.
Thank you so much, Gretchen. That was absolutely wonderful. And I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us. And hopefully this will touch many lives. This is Empowered Trans Woman. And this has been a conversation with Gretchen Custodio Diez in Manila, Philippines.